there's a book out in the Christian market called, The Travel Guide to Heaven for Kids. And it's about a kid who apparently visits heaven, and it's a children's book about what heaven is like. And the question is, is that harmless? Is that innocent fun? It's just a story. Or is it something much more corrosive? Is it a damaging sort of book? So I don't think that's just a fantasy book. If they labeled it as fiction, if they said this is a made-up story, it's a fantasy book like Harry Potter, fine, go ahead and write all the books like that you want. My concern is they don't. They're passing these books off as legitimate, true stories. Or, yes, this story that we're saying with this little kid, of course that didn't happen. This kid we just made up. But the heaven that he's visiting, that is all true. That's the implication you're getting from these books. That's what I have a problem with. Like, at least with, a Twilight or something, it's very obvious, like, look, this isn't for real. It's all fantasy, and maybe you like that, and maybe you don't. But when you read these books about Colton Burpo visiting heaven on his deathbed, or whatever that story was, or, Dr. Eben Alexander visiting heaven when he was supposedly dead, those stories are like they're passed off as nonfiction. They really happened. They're memoirs of sorts. If they were just labeled fiction, fine, let's do that. Remember, like, when Oprah had James Fry on and his book, like A Million Little Pieces or something, and he had some parts in the book that didn't really happen, and that was amazing because he was passing this off as a real life memoir, but there were these things that were not true. And when Mike Daisey in This American Life talked about the Apple Store, but he had some things that he exaggerated for, theatrical effect, people railed on the guy because we thought he was telling a true story, but it turned out it wasn't true. But when Christians write books about going to heaven or, visiting God and being at the right hand, being on the right hand of God, no one calls them out on it. They can pass it off as a true story. They sell millions of copies, and no one's saying you got to relabel that book or put it in a different section, or don't give it a Dewey Decimal number, give it a 3-letter combination, or whatever the library terminology is. But it's not a true story, so just label it as fantasy, as fiction, and then I'd be on board with you. And while we're at it, maybe the Bible needs to be reclassified in that section as well. But that's the problem. The problem isn't that they're writing a book about heaven. It's not that it's for kids. It's that they're passing it off as like, look, this is what heaven is really like. And it's not, because no one's been there, because it's not a real place. If they would just say that, or at least just put a disclaimer at the bottom, like this is a parody book, or we didn't really intend for you to believe this. If you just say that somewhere, I'm on board. I'll get a copy of the book if that happens. But it doesn't happen. My name is Hemant Mehta, and I write at friendlyatheist.com. If you have any questions or you'd like to join in the discussion, please leave your comments below.